So for those of you who were with me for patterns, some of it will be familiar, but it's always good to revise. And like I say, we're going to use it a lot when we start to draw graphs. All right, so let's have a look. If we have a look here, so one of the ways that we know in which we can represent a relationship between variables, so between X and Y, is through an equation. We know that the other ways to represent this relationship are through flow diagrams, through tables, even through words. We can describe a pattern, but essentially we need to be comfortable with all of them in order to work with a pattern. Now, when we start getting to drawing graphs, you are going to see the two important ways that we work with are the table and the equation. So I'm going to start to chat about this in terms of graphs now today, and then on Monday, we're going to start drawing graphs, and we're going to use the rule, we're going to use a table in order to draw graphs. So it's really important that we understand how to get from a rule to a table, or a table to a rule, etc., etc. Right, so this first rule that we have here is given to you at the top, and it says consider the rule y is equal to 3x minus 1. Okay, so that's a rule that we're working with for the specific question. If we just break down what that means, please remember that a coefficient to a variable, so this 3 in front of the x, is telling me that I'm saying 3 times x. A coefficient implies a product. We are timesing. So this rule is telling me to times the input by 3 and subtract 1. So now in question A, it's asking us to draw a flow diagram to represent this. Because we've broken down the rule, hopefully that becomes a bit easier. Remember, our flow diagram is our input, goes into our little number machine, a rule is applied, and we get an output. So the rule that's applied is what we've just spoken about, the fact that we need to times the input by 3. We then need to take whatever that product is and we need to subtract 1 from it. And that will give us what our output is. So when we are looking at rules, sometimes it's quite nice or makes our lives easier to break it down or to put it into a flow diagram, so that if we have to go and find values for a table like we're going to do in B, we've got a flow diagram to do that. If you're comfortable just using the rule, then you don't need to draw a flow diagram unless we ask you to. But for some people, a flow diagram is quite useful. So when we now look at this table, I'm going to have a look at how you can use both the rule and the flow diagram, just so that you can see how to use both. But honestly, if you don't have to draw a flow diagram and it doesn't work for you, just use the rule. It's absolutely fine. Right, so the second question is asking us to complete the table. Now, hopefully, if you were with me for patterns, this table situation is not new. And even if you weren't with me for patterns and you're new, hopefully this idea of a table is not super scary. Just a reminder, we have got in our table an input, which is represented by X, and an output, which is represented by Y. Remember, this is our flow diagram. It's an input value, and we get an output value. So this is why these are different variations of the same thing. Both of them represent my pattern. I'm just taking a flow diagram and putting it into a table. Okay, so if we want to work out our specific output values according to the inputs that we've been given, like I said, you can do it with the rule, you can do it with the flow diagram. It's completely up to you. I'm going to do a couple with the flow diagram, couple with the rule. You do what you're comfortable with. So if we take our input value of 2, negative 2, maybe I should look at my signs. I've got negative 2. That needs to go into my flow diagram. So I need to times it by 3. I need to subtract 1, and I need to get my output. Now, negative 2 times positive 3 is negative 6. And negative 6 minus another 1 is going to give me an output of negative 7. So using my flow diagram, I've been able to determine that my output for the first input of negative 2 is negative 7. Now, I could do that with any of my inputs, really doesn't matter. If I now choose to do that with my second input of negative 1, negative 1 times positive 3 gives me negative 3, and negative 3 minus another 1, so I'm already at negative 3, I have to subtract another 1, ends me up or results in an output of -4. So I'm applying my rule according to the flow diagram to get my outputs. Right, the question of how do you get 7, I'm going to go through this again. Let's listen carefully. So how do we get -7? Well, let me actually write it down the way I've done it here. We've got an input value of -2. We times that by +3. So negative times a positive is a negative. 2 times 3 is 6. We've got -6. Now I have to subtract 1. And if I'm already at -6 on my number line and I have to subtract another 1, that ends up at -7. So that's how I'm getting -7 as my first output value. Right, so that's using my flow diagram. Literally input, apply the rule, off you go. You don't have to use a flow diagram, especially if you don't feel like drawing one if you haven't been asked to do one. You can use the rule. So reminder, your rule was y is equal to 3x minus 1. If we now take our input of 0, remember what this input is telling me is that x is equal to 0. And so what I need to do here is I need to substitute my input value into my equation. So that means y is equal to 3 times 0 minus 1. We know that 3 times 0 is 0. And we know that 0 minus 1 is -1. And so our output here is -1. If I now do the same thing, so if I wanted to apply my rule now with, for example, the positive one, again, I'm going to substitute in my x value. So my rule is y is, no, stop it, sorry. Y is equal to 3x minus 1. I substitute in x equals 1. Oh no, sorry everyone. Oh. I substitute in x equals 1, so y is equal to 3 times 1 minus 1. 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 minus 1 is 2. Whoops. So our output value here is +2. Right, so whether you use a flow diagram, whether you use the equation, it really doesn't matter. You will get the output that you need. So on the chat, what I would like from you guys is the output value that I'm just going to use A, where your input is 2, and the output value at B, where your input is 3. Right, Omfa, hang on to that. We're going to come and discuss that now in a second. So guys, again, on the chat, I want answers for A and B in the table. So basically the 2 output values for an input of 2 and an input of 3. Oh, sorry, everyone. Good, guys. Keep those answers coming. Going to give you another minute or so.
Let's go, my people. Let's go. Remember, we have A and B. Let's go, my peeps.
Well done, guys. Doing well? Right. Guys, if you can't see the screen, you might need to log out and log back in again. Okay, who would like to raise their hand to explain either A or B for me? And guys, just remember, there are 63 of you. I will do my absolute best to give everyone a chance. Bonolo?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
So first, ma'am, we're going to say 2 times 3.
Good.
Which is going to give us 6.
Good.
So we're going to say 6 minus 1, which is going to give us 5.
Excellent. Well done. So guys, our first input, or the input that's represented by A, is +5. Well done. Okay. So follow the rule, follow the equation. You should get it. Zimima Madla, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Would you like to give us the next one?
Yes, please, ma'am.
Okay.
So I say 3 times 3, which is equals to 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say 9 minus 1, which is equals to 8.
Perfect. So B is 8. Do you prefer Zimi
8.
or Zimi Madla?
Zimi, please.
Okay.
Thank
Right,
you.
guys. Of course. Right, guys. So there you go. Easy as pie. All we do is we take our inputs and we apply our rule. All right. So that's very, very important that we know how to do that. So I'm going to wait here in case you want to take a screenshot. I'm also going to wait here in case anyone has got questions. Now is the time to raise your hand and ask me your questions. Otherwise, we're going to have a look at another example. And I think because you guys are on such a roll, you can probably do it by yourselves. But let's see how we go. Remember, any questions at this point, you are welcome to raise your hand and ask me. Right, Motaban, question?
Hello, ma'am. Sorry for being late.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's just that I couldn't log in, or if I did log in, I couldn't see through your screen.
That's okay. Just remember, it's all recorded, so you can go and rewatch the recording.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, I'm hoping everyone's got their screenshots. Right, so just quickly, I told Umfa to hold on to the we're adding 3 each time, and then I didn't say anything. So let's just take a second and let's go back to what we do hopefully know about number patterns. In that, what we can see here is if we go from output to output, I can see that each time I'm adding 3. So that's why if we wanted to describe this rule in words, I would say I'm adding 3 each time. Now remember, guys, this addition of 3 comes into my equation with the coefficient of whatever x is. And so what we see is that when we are adding or subtracting the same value every single time, we are getting a constant relationship, or maybe I should say a constant difference relationship. We are increasing or decreasing by the same amount each time. That translates into my rule as the coefficient for whatever x is. And now that's going to be quite important because when we eventually draw a relationship like this, or draw a graph, we're going to see that the graph does make sense. If we are adding or subtracting the same thing each time, our graph is going to look quite specific. There's a specific shape that is assigned to a relationship like that. So it's important to keep in mind everything we spoke about in patterns. Right. Whoopsie, got a bit excited there. If we have a look at the second one, we've got y is equal to minus x plus 3. Now, what I want you to remember here is that in front of any variable, you've got a coefficient of 1. Sometimes it's an actual number, but if there's no number written in front of your variable, there is a 1. In this case, because there's also a negative sign, the coefficient of my x variable is negative 1. So when I want to write out my flow diagram, as question A asks me to do, I am, according to my rule, multiplying x by negative 1. So I multiply by a negative 1. I'm just choosing to put it in brackets because it helps me remember that I need to multiply by a negative. And then according to my rule, the next thing that I need to do is I need to add 3. And if I apply that rule to any input, I will get my output. All right, so what I want from you guys is I want the values of the output, so A, B, C, D, E, and F. What I would advise that you do, I don't know what's happening, is that you do them all first. And then on the chat, I want to see all of the answers together. So A, B, C, D, E, F. So sit for a second, do all of them first, and then put your answers on the chat for me. Right, so apply your rule or use your flow diagram to give me those output values.
Remember, you can give your answer after you have written on your book. You can give your answers A equals to this, B equals to this, C, D, and you list them like that. Okay. Like this, you don't have to give us one by one because you're supposed to do it on your book first, and then you can give us the answers.
Good. I'm seeing those answers coming in. Well done, guys. I was just answering a few questions. Keep those answers coming. You're doing really, really nicely, grade 8s. Remember, answers, it would be ideal if we can put all of our answers in one go, just so that I can see who's getting them right, who's getting them wrong. It's quite hard to keep track of everyone's names when there's 66 of us, but keep them coming. I'm going to give you another minute, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Sianda. Thank you for giving it the answer like that. So I think there were some few of you also. Thanks, Naledi, Dintle, Sawyer. Thank you, Omfa. Thank you, Chipo. Thank you. Yeah, wonderful guys. Panolo, thank you. Nice guys.
Good, grade 8s. Right. Hands up if you'd like to give me some of these answers. Again, just remember there's 66 of you and there's 6 of these. So I'm doing my best to give everyone a chance in all of our lessons. So now, would you like to give us the first one?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Okay, ma'am. So I'm going to explain how did I do A.
Perfect.
I said -2 times -1. And I got +2.
Good.
And I said 2 plus 3 is equal to 5.
Excellent. So guys, really important there, like Unam said, a negative times a negative is a positive. So -2 times -1 is +2. We need to be careful of those signs. Excellent, Unam. Thank you. Well done. Right, so guys, the final answer there was 5. Right, Tahira, would you like to give us the next one? B?
Okay, so -1 multiplied by -1 equals +1,
Good.
and +1 plus 3 equals 4.
Excellent. Well done. Again, guys, that conversation of a negative times a negative is a positive. Be very careful with your signs. Excellent, Tahira. Well done. Shembo, would you like to give us where we at? C.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes.
So, ma'am, I said -1 times 1 plus 3 equals to -1 plus 3 equals to 2.
Okay, so I think you did D. So let's just, so we've got -1 times 1 is -1. And then
Yes,
negative
ma'am.
1 plus 3 is 2. Perfect. Well
Yes,
done.
ma'am.
So
Thank
guys,
you, ma'am.
here we've just skipped to D, which is fine. D is 2. So just when you're marking, make sure you've got that right. Bonolo, can you do C for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, ma'am, firstly, we're gonna say 0 multiplied by -1, which is going to give me 0.
Good.
Then we're gonna say 0 plus 3, which is gonna give me 3.
Perfect. Excellent. So guys, what was important for C was that we remember that 0 times any value is going to be 0. So exactly as Manolo said, 0 times -1, we don't care that it's a negative, it's 0 because we're timesing by 0. I feel like I'm saying 0 a lot now all of a sudden. Anyways. Right, Mutabang, would you like to give us E?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
2 multiplied by -1 is -2.
Good.
And -2 plus 3 is 1.
Perfect. Excellent. So E is 1. And like Mutabang said here, guys, now we've got a positive times a negative. So +2 times -1 is a -2. So now I just need to be careful of my signs when I add 3. Well done, Mutabang. Very nicely done. Sianda, would you like to give us F? Okay. Chantal, F? No, and I'm just unmuting a whole bunch of people. Chantal?
Good
There we go.
evening, ma'am.
Evening.
Ma'am, for F, I said 3 times -1 is equals to -3.
Good.
Plus 3 is equals to 0.
Excellent. Well done. So guys, what we need to be careful of there is that we've got a -3 plus 3. So we end up at 0. Excellent, Chantal. Thank you very much. Well done. Okay, and guys, again, I know there were lots of hands. We're going to do more examples, so your time will come. Keep putting those hands up. I appreciate you putting them up. I'm going to stop here, well, I'm going to wait here in case anyone still needs to take a screenshot. Please make sure you do that. I'm also going to stop here if anyone would like to ask me a question. Didintle was just asking to give the answer. That's it. Don't worry. Didintle, thank you. Well done. I appreciate you offering that answer, and hopefully in the next one we will be able to pick on you. You guys remember, any questions? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm hoping we've all got our screenshots.
I think for us, why are we saying F equals to 0?
Oh,
On the
okay.
chart.
So, is that what you mean? Do you not understand why F is 0? So I might have just misunderstood. Just let me know so I know if I need to re-explain it or not.
Please raise your hand.
So, do you not understand why F is 0?
I understand you.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well done. Alrighty, you guys. So then I think it's about time for that brain break. So remember, we want to wait for final answers on the chat. When I say final answers, for those of you that are new, basically what you want to do is you want to work your way down from the very first equation, trying to figure out the value of the skates, the chess piece, and the jacket in order to get to the value of the last equation there. So we're going to look out for that correct answer. Excuse me. We're going to look out for that correct answer on the chat. And once we see the first person to get the correct answer, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand to explain it for us. Sorry, I just need to double check something.
I'm so happy y'all got the joke. I also just laughed big time. I also had so much fun with this joke today. Nope, it's not 34. Yeah, it's okay. We can note that down, but please do put your answer. Didn't you're so close, but that's not the answer. So Kia, oh nice. Okay,
Well
I'm not
done,
gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything there because you can't explain to us, but well done.
And
So
don't
let's
now all
see.
just tell us the answer. We're going to pick on you. So you need to be able to explain it.
Exactly, exactly. But man, yeah, that was so fast.
Yeah.
Kia didn't guess. Okay, guys, I trust Kia. I believe that Kia knows the answer. She did not guess. Kia, don't show them. Don't show them, Kia. Don't show them. Well done. I trust and believe in you that you know the answer. They need to figure it out. Why is that the answer? Let's go, Omfa. I have you. They must figure it out, Kia. Don't help them. Guys, let's go. Okay, all of us needs to just say, well, Kia must get better so Kia can solve the problem. Like this, y'all don't have to solve the problem. Didn't they? We're giving it a try. Oh, Senzo is our winner. Senzo, do you want to raise your hand so you can explain to the whole class? Yeah, well done, by the way. We are still proud of you. Don't worry. And speedy recovery to you. Senzo, please raise your hand. Bonolo, also, you can raise your hand. Guys, you have to raise your hand so that we know you know how you got 55. Chantal, also raise your hand. So whoever raises their hand, it means that they know how to do this. There we go, Chantal. You are ready to go. Chantal, tell us what's going on. So I'm gonna unmute you. You need to unmute on your side so you can tell us. And Bunolo is there to help you if you get stuck.
Okay, ma'am. So the shoes are 12.
Good.
And it's equals to 36. And the shoes here it's 12 as well.
Chantal, sorry, you broke up a little bit there. Say it again for me.
Ma'am, the shoes on the second one is 12 times 8 plus 8. So the
Okay,
chest
good.
is
There
8.
we go. Good. The chest pieces, well, the double chest pieces are 8. Good.
Yes, ma'am. And the next one I got 4 for the chest.
Good, because there's only 1. Yeah.
Yes, and I got 7 for the shirt.
Good. I'm just going to quickly interrupt. Guys, remember BODMAS. We have to say 4 times 7 first, which gives us 28. And then 28 plus 4 gives us that 32. Good, Chantal, keep going.
And ma'am, that one was 7 as well. No, ma'am. Yes, plus 12.
Good.
Ma'am, I can continue. Times 4.
Good. Well done. Do you want me to finish it?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
do you want to finish it?
Ma'am, you can finish it, ma'am.
Are you sure? You got the right answer, so you can finish it if you want.
Oh, okay, ma'am. So I said 12 times 4.
Good.
Which is equals to 48.
Good.
Plus 7 is equals to 55.
Excellent. So guys, what was really important that Chantal did there was the multiplication first. That has to happen first. Chantal, excellent. Well done.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I needed to have a cough. All right, so guys, as much as these are like fun brain breaks, and they should be, please remember that they're going to help you so much when we get to equations. If you can see an equation and be able to identify unknowns and deal with it, then solving equations later on is going to become much easier. Right, very nicely done. So the answer is 55. We're going to have a look at another example that's a little bit different to the first two that we started with. In that in this example, we have got the table with some of it already filled in, and we're going to have a look at how to describe this pattern and how to get a rule for this pattern. Okay, so if we have a look at our table that we've been given here, we have been given our set of inputs, all of the inputs we've got, and we've got our outputs. Now we've got some outputs, and the first question is asking us to describe the pattern in words. So that's sort of what we spoke about earlier when we said in the first example, we were adding 3 each time. So we want to see how am I going from the first output to the second output, what am I doing? Well, from 2 to 0, I'm subtracting 2. From 0 to -2, I'm also subtracting 2. From -2 to -4, I'm also subtracting 2. And so what we see is that we've got a constant difference, or we are constantly subtracting -2. And so when we're asked to then describe the pattern in words, that's exactly what we would say. We would say we are subtracting 2. Now, some of you do like to write it slightly differently. So if you like to say adding -2, that is absolutely fine. Remember, if you add a -2, the positive and the negative become negative. So you're subtracting 2. So it's absolutely fine to say adding -2. You will get that correct, no problem. Now, guys, what that means is that because you know what the rule is, you can continue this table. So we can subtract another 2 and we can get -8 as our next output. We can subtract another 2 and get our 6th output as -10. And so we can continue our pattern to get subsequent outcomes. Okay, now that's all well and good, but what happens if I say to you, I want the 48th term? You don't want to have to sit there and write out -2 all the way until 48. That's time consuming and it takes too long. We don't want to do that. So that is why we often ask you the second question, which is giving us an algebraic equation. Now, remember, another way of phrasing this is for me to ask you to give us the general rule. And this is now where we want to write a rule in terms of X and Y in order to describe this pattern. Okay, so remember, if you were with us for the pattern section, the trick is to know what you're adding or subtracting each time. We always start with Y equals. And what we then do is we've got -2x. That's where we start. So the coefficient, as we spoke about in the first example, the coefficient to x is always going to be whatever you are adding or subtracting. So we start there. We've got y equals -2x. Now we're not done. We need to make sure that there's nothing I want to add or subtract to this rule in order to get my output. So this is now where I need to double check. If I take my first input. So my first input was x is equal to 0, and I want to get an output of y equals 2. So if we apply the rule that we have so far, y equals -2x, and I substitute in 0 for x. So y is equal to -2 times 0. Well, we know that 0 times anything is 0. So right now I'm getting a y value, which is not what I want. So I've got a bit of a problem there. But that's all right. All I do is I ask myself, okay, well, how do I get from 0 to 2? I add 2. So that's probably going to mean that my rule needs to be -2x plus 2. But then we double check ourselves. We always want to make sure that whatever we've added or subtracted is actually correct. So now I'll go to my next input. You can really pick any input or output. It really doesn't matter. But I'm just going to choose the next one. So I've got my input as 1, and I want an output of 0. So let's double check now using the rule that we've established. Y is equal to -2x plus 2. If we substitute in x equals 1, we've got y is equal to -2 times 1 plus 2. -2 times +1 is -2. and negative 2 plus 2 is 0. That is the y value that we wanted. So this rule that we found is correct. So we always just double check that what we've gotten is correct and that our rule does actually apply to whatever it is that we're working with here. Alrighty, I'm going to add a question here just because there was a question earlier that someone had asked. But remember that this rule now allows us to work out any y value, and we could actually use this rule to go backwards to work out any x value. Okay, so if we, let's do this on the side here. So if we have a look at, what are we at? Question C. So if I said to you, determine the value of term, I don't know, let's go term 25. So again, you don't want to have to continue this table until x equals 25. That is way too time consuming. That's not going to work for me. We don't want to do that. We can use our rule. So if we go and use our rule tells us, let me just put a better color here, that we have got y is equal to negative 2x plus 2. Now this term 25, that's the position, that is the x value. So I'm basically telling you that x is 25. So we can substitute. Y is equal to minus 2 times 25 plus 2. Minus 2 times 25 is negative 50 plus 2. And as you have wonderfully put there on the chat for me, minus 50 plus 2 is negative 48. So that means if you wrote this term all the way to the 25th term of the sequence, at the 25th position, you would be writing down negative 48. All right, so that's quite straightforward, nothing too tricky there. We don't have to stress too much about that. I don't want to say the next one is harder, but if I give you, sorry, I just want to move this over so we've got some space down here. If I give you a y value and ask you for the input, we do just need to be careful of the fact that our working out or our working out is a little bit more challenging. Really not a lot, not by a huge amount, but there's just some things we need to take into account. So I just need to get a value here. So give me 2 seconds. Let's say. Right, so if I now gave you question D that said, determine which term, so look at how the words or the phrasing of the question is different. So determine which term of the sequence or the pattern, I'm just going to go pattern, it's a little bit shorter to write, has a value of negative 74. Right, so the phrasing is a little bit different. Essentially what it's saying is this pattern will keep going, and at some point in this y output line, you would write down y equals, or you would write down a value of negative 74. I want to know what is the corresponding x term. Which term in the sequence is going to be negative 74? Right, so we need to read questions very carefully when it comes to number patterns, because what we need to see here is, because I've given you a value of the term, I have given you a y. And so that now means that when we've got our rule, we are going to want to substitute this value of negative 74 now in place of y, because it is the value of the term. It is the output once we've applied the rule. So now we've got negative, whoopsie daisies, let's try that again. Now we've got negative 74 is equal to minus 2x plus 2. Now guys, we haven't, or we, Watobe, we have not dealt with solving equations just yet. I think most of you have probably done it at school. Actually, as I'm saying, no, we haven't done solving equations. But most of you have probably done it at school. And you should remember most of it from grade 7. But when we solve an equation, remember we want to get that x right by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. And what that is going to result in is it's going to result in negative 76 on the left, because minus 74 minus another 2 is negative 76 is equal to negative 2x. Minus 2 plus 2 is 0, so that falls away. Now I still want to get x alone, so the next thing that I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to divide both sides by a negative 2. Now remember, negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. They essentially cancel each other out. But on the left-hand side, I've got a negative divided by negative, which is a positive. And 76 divided by 2 is 38. Sure? 5. Yes, 38. And so what this is telling me is that the 38th term of my pattern will be the value negative 74. Okay, so you can work backwards, for lack of a better description, from y to x, much in the same way as in question C, you can work with x to get y. Excuse me. So this is why we need to be able to use our equation, or this is one of the ways in which we can use our equation in order to solve for different things. All right, so I see there were a lot of questions on the chat. Sorry, I had to close the chat, otherwise I was running out of space. So I'm going to stop here, take your screenshots, but if anyone has any questions, now is the time to raise your hand and ask me. And please remember specific questions. Don't tell me I'm confused, repeat everything. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you to rewatch the video. Ask me something specific so I can help you. Sange? Oh, no, okay. Right, so just, oh, there we go, yeah.
Ma'am, I'm confused with the work we're doing. It's my first listen back on the app.
Okay, so if you're confused about the work that we're doing, what I would recommend you go and do is you go and watch the videos on Watobe's website. But I would start with the patterns videos and then move on to these ones, because the stuff that we're doing here, we've already done in our patterns course. So I would start with those videos and then come back to these ones, and hopefully this will make a little bit more sense.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Right, just quickly, guys, the stuff in the green. So I added those 2 questions because someone had asked me a question and you need to be able to do this. So I just added them in. The stuff in the green is when I give you an x value and you have to solve for y, or like in D, when I give you a y value and you have to solve for x. So it's basically solving an equation. Senzo?
Ma'am, may you please explain the part where you got the -2, ma'am?
Okay, so just so that I'm on the same page as you. Oh, sorry. Panic. I'm panicking. Clicking things. When you say the -2, do you mean this -2 up here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so guys, I mean, language around, and we'll send the quiz in, please, let's all be patient. The language around equations, people use different things. So sometimes what teachers like to say is we want to move this +2 over the equal sign. When you move a term over the equal sign, its sign changes. So what actually happens here when you move it over is you've got the -74, but now you're bringing in a +2 over, so it becomes -2.
-2.
And so we end up with -74 -2. And so Tohira, in answer to your question, this is now where we get -76. We're at -74, we subtract another 2, and so that gives us -76 equals -2x. And so then we solve from there by dividing both sides by 2. Right, so I hope that makes sense, guys. Again, it's solving equations. You have done equations in grade 7. We are eventually going to do equations, but this is just solving equations. So it's adding or subtracting or dividing or minusing or whatever, using opposite or inverse operations in order to solve for our variable. Alrighty, so I'm leaving this here obviously in case anyone wants screenshots. Maybe we should do that.